Okay, we're back in session 4, and this is going to be lecture number 12, which is the second part of the Regional Economic Development and Diversification story. And so when last we were in discussion, it was about a pretty bleak time for the Tri-Cities, and we characterized that simply as economic freefall. And so the question became one, okay, fine, now what are we going to do about it? And so that's where this begins. So now we're up to the mid-'80s, and where it says the bubble bursts, and that's exactly right. And I'll take you up to around the year 2000. So here, how do you think about a problem like this? And so that's what I want to walk you through was how did we get our heads around this to decide what we were going to do? And so you might think about this as one of those little balls on a stand, the snowballs, you shake up or whatever. But if you see the purplish circle, think about that as the economy. And the bottom part is a base upon which that economy sits. And very, very simple model. And our view was, look, we need new dollars coming in here. Duh. But, the way you create jobs and wealth in a community is new money has to come in from any source you can possibly think of. If it's a new dollar that wasn't in town before, we want it. Second thing you got to do is you got to capture it and circulate it. And this is the multiplier effect. But as many times as you can use that dollar, the more you get out of it, the more your community benefits from it. And so various industries have different multipliers, and it all depends on supply chain and where the dollar goes and all that kind of stuff. But you want to capture as much as that before it leaks away, and ultimately the money does, and it'll find its way into retirement accounts, or someone's going to go to Seattle to go shopping, or whatever it might be. But this was, so we were thinking about what brings a new dollar into town and how can we circulate it in town as long as possible. And so we said, all right, let's go back to the fundamentals of economic development. It's kind of taught everywhere that they teach economic development. But there's only 3 ways you can do this, bring new money into town. You can take the businesses that you have and grow them. So that's one way. If they're doing more, they're bringing in new money. Second thing is you start new businesses that don't currently exist. So these are the brand new entrepreneurial startups. And the third thing is you attract new industry that you don't currently have. That's it. Those are it. That's the only way. You add jobs, create wealth. And the trick to those 3 things is they have to be, and this is some of the wonkiness, what we call primary industries or primary businesses. And primary means they actually bring the new money in. The secondary businesses are the ones that circulate it in town. So if you're a retail outlet, you're relying on the money that's already coming into town. If you're a restaurant, you're relying on the money that's already in town. If you're a gasoline station, you're relying on the people who are in town to sell your gasoline to. So they're the ones that help you circulate it in town. But it's the primary industries that bring the new dollar in. All right, so what are those? And what might be a natural fit to our community? Because you don't want to just make stuff up or start from scratch. Rome is burning as we're having these discussions, and we need to build on what we have already. And what did we have already? Well, you could guess what it is today. It's not changed. Agriculture and food processing. And that brings new money in. Our products are sold all over the world. And so that's new dollars coming into the region. All kinds of light manufacturing, no matter what it is, but as long as what it is they make, they sell someplace else, light manufacturing is a good thing. I mentioned to you some of the non-destructive test equipments, but some of the technology spin-offs from Hanford, like the fuel fabrication thing, but the non-destructive test equipments which emerged were in lots of different fields, and they sold their product all over the world. So how can we do more of those? Get this, healthcare. Now, healthcare benefits everybody who's here, but how does healthcare get paid for? It gets paid for by your insurance, mostly, or from Medicare, government insurance. And so are those new dollars into town? Yes. And how would we benefit from that secondarily? Well, it's going to help us, people who live here, want to live here and be here. How about retirement? Is retirement new money into town? Yes. Retirees are drawing off their savings, their pensions, their 401ks or whatever it is. But they are a source of new money into town. And then when it comes in, they'll spend on healthcare, they'll spend on clothing, and they'll go to restaurants, et cetera, so it will circulate in town. How about this one? Sports and recreation. What we noticed was, man, why is it in the spring I can't go to a restaurant, it's always packed with young people, and they all have game shirts on? Well, what we began to understand was, because of the weather here, we were becoming the recipient of regional sports tournaments, whether they soccer, baseball, even high school track meets and regional events like that. And so we said, well, that's new money into town. If you're a visitor and you come here and you bring your children to participate in a sports event, you're in our motels, you're buying our gasoline, and you're in our restaurants, and that's all new money. It's not our money. You brought it from some other place. So sports and recreation. Warehousing and distribution. So what did we have here? You all know the rail yards here in Pasco, so we had incredible rail capacity. We have major interstate highways running right through here. We had the airport, and we had barge traffic. We have every transportation system there is, we have here. And so we already had it. And so warehousing and distribution, all of that is new money coming into town if we can take advantage of having all those facilities. So that's how you think about creating an economic development program. What brings new money into town, and what takes advantage of what you naturally already have. And you think out of the box in other ways, like who would think sports and recreation or retirement or warehousing and distribution might be right. And so that was the strategy or the strategic thinking that went into this. But there was two other pieces that formed the base of this. One is the business climate. So it's not enough to just say, well, we have these things, but you have to make those businesses want to start here. You have to make the businesses that are here want to grow. You have to enable them to be able to do that easily. And you have to be able to attract a new industry that says, well, why should I come to your town? You know, what have you got that makes this appealing to me? And so the tax climate of the area, whether that's permitting, having zoned industrial property ready to go, having infrastructure, you know, do you have water, sewer, power, the things that an industrial client might need? Do you have it? Is it ready to go? What would it cost if you don't have it for me to have it? I mean, you got to think about all those things. And then the final piece is quality of life. And today that nomenclature is more like quality of place, but quality of life is, hey, are your schools any good? Why would I come to your town if, you know, I've got kids and I think your schools are lousy? I mean, and tell me about your parks and recreation. Tell me about crime. I mean, make me want to live in your town. And so all of this is a system. You have to hit on, think of it as an engine with 5 cylinders, if you will. But you have to hit on all 5 of those and do them all. So strategically, this was the model. This is how we chose to think about solving the problem and put together a plan. And so whether it was higher education issues and workforce development issues, whether it was transportation that I mentioned, tax climate, energy, all that sort of stuff, all of that had to be built into the plan. And of course, I don't want to neglect and don't mean to be neglecting restaurants, retail, hotel, motel, banking and finance, and professional services and things like that. And they're important too. And we didn't ignore those either. As a matter of fact, we had a gaping hole in this community. So let's see, I'm going to be careful there, but there were a number of high technology startup companies. They've become hugely successful. They're here in town. But when they were starting, they were making products to sell around the world. And the question was, who in this town could help me with a marketing plan for international business? We didn't have anybody. Who could help me with international finance and currency rates and all of that? We didn't have anybody. You know, we were all geared to the Hanford economy and local. And so whether you're a banker or whoever you were, we didn't have any of those secondary business services, and we recognized that and knew they had to be created. Same thing with hotels. If we're going to have sports and recreation events, you got to have a place to put people. And so having hotels is important because it brings new money into town. Just look at what happened with Iron Man this weekend. And so I hit hard on the primary side, but I want you to aware that the retail side was important too, because it's a huge factor in quality of life and business climate as well. All right, so what do you do next? Well, there I was at TriDec, and we, our staff of 6, and there were, it was me, Sam, and the administrative people. And I said, hell, we need an army. I mean, there's no way 1 or 2 of us are going to, do anything. We need an army. And so we said, all right, we're going to get everybody in this community involved in this thing, everybody. And so we adopted a visioning process. So we started with the current situation. Where are we today with everything I just described to you in terms of the primary business sectors, quality of life, business climate, and all that sort of stuff. So you understand the way things are today. And then we sat down and we said, well, what do we want them to be? What's the vision of tomorrow? And we included hundreds of people in this process. And that was, what is our higher education system going to look like? What is agriculture and food processing going to look like? What's our small business situation going to look like? What's our entrepreneurial climate going to look like? What NGOs, non-government organizations? What about our social services programs? They matter. That's quality of life. What are we going to do about them? And that is a really, really bad example of it's a great example of my PowerPoint skills, but a bad example of what should be a jigsaw puzzle. And so what we're trying to do is have all these pieces in a jigsaw puzzle. And what is the key with the jigsaw puzzle? It's the top of the box. What picture begins to emerge? It's the top of the box. You can't do this without the top of you can't assemble a jigsaw puzzle with hundreds and hundreds of pieces unless you have the top of the box. So the whole point of the visioning process with hundreds of people was describe the future of the Tri-Cities that we want. That's the top of the box. Then we'll figure out all the puzzle pieces and the blues and the grays and the greens and all that kind of stuff. So we did that. And I'm here to tell you, on this yellowed sheet of paper, I think I'm the only one in town, this is it. It's 2 pages, and this was the vision of the Tri-Cities, and it says, interestingly, the Tri-Cities in the year 2000. We've gone way beyond on this, but to read it it's fun. There's a lot that became impossible and was never going to happen. There's a lot that did happen, and there's a lot that's yet to happen. But we captured it and we wrote it down. And just as a quick aside, I might tell you that we did this in 1989. I think it's dated 88, but anyway, in 1989 was the 100th anniversary of the state of Washington. And part of the centennial of the state was to create a time capsule and to bury it in Olympia. And they asked every community, give your vision for the future of your community, and we'll give it to us, the Centennial Commission, and we're going to put it in the time capsule and bury it. So sitting in Olympia is this vision in a time capsule. And when's it going to be open? It's going to be opened at the sesquicentennial, which is the 150-year anniversary of the state, which is the year 2039. And I have a goal in life, and that's to make it that long. I'm 72 now, and we'll see whether I can pull that off or not. But that vision is alive, and we've updated it by decade almost ever since. So that's the one from back then, but there are more recent versions. So anyway, but the whole point was to get a community excited about its future that as the community sees it. So that's part of the psychology of all this. I told you earlier in the first part of this, my apology about being wonky on the economic side, but the other part is the psychology of people and groups and communities was huge. And so we gave everybody a role in this thing, and everyone gets a seat at the table, and everyone comes together to try and figure out how to make all those puzzle parts real and get them all hooked together. And so we created a table for all the partners to sit at, and created a thing called the community mobilization process. And we put, as I mentioned, hundreds of people through this community mobilization project. We branded this whole thing as Tri-Cities Renaissance, Renaissance being a rebirth. So this was going to be the rebirth of the Tri-Cities. And we got everybody together to begin working on this. We also decided that we would organize and finance this however it would be necessary to do that. And again, whether you're a city government or the head of a school district or a city government, county, university, it didn't matter, industry groups. If there was a place for you and an interest, we found a way. And then we helped find the money to do it. And then you execute and you go back and you say, is our current situation moving towards the vision that we want? And it's just a continuous process. And we held ourselves accountable to the public. Every year we gave an annual report on what's working, what isn't, what's going fast, what's going slow, where we need help, where we don't. I mean, we had nothing to hide. And so we remain publicly accountable for doing all that. I just want to say a quick aside, where it says engage everyone, I just want to give one anecdotal story about how amazing this became. In that purple thing, in the Richland School District, the superintendent led their own visioning exercise for the Richland School District. And as you can see in that pyramid, they built that down. So every building then, elementary, middle school, high school, they had their own vision. And I was actually handed one day a paper that went, I had the school district's vision. I was handed, here's what our building did. And then all the way down, the next group was, and here's what our maintenance staff put together. And then I was handed a sheet of paper from one of the janitors who said, here's my vision of what I want to do and what I'm going to contribute to this. We went from the janitor in a school building all the way to the community vision. I could draw a line all the way through. It was really amazing. Okay, so that's how we got going, and let's dig into some of the details real quick. So we knew, I said we needed an army, we needed to put TRIDEC on steroids, if you will. And so we beefed the institution, the organization up mightily. We had been getting public and private money, but that escalated. I mean, everyone recognized this problem, and the state did, and the state came through with a ton of money. Our Renaissance campaign raised over $2 million privately from local businesses and people. We actually passed a bill in Congress that allowed us to create loaned executives. So we got people from Hanford who were on the contractor payroll to come and help us do these mega projects. I'll talk about that in a second. We branded those as a Renaissance. I mentioned the community mobilization project was a big part of that. We had a community diversification board, which was separate from the board of TRIDEC to oversee all the nuts and bolts of all the activities we had going. We had the annual report, which gave public accountability, and we communicated all the time. I was out 5 nights a week talking to groups during the day. It was just giving everybody this story that we could. And then an important part of this is we knew we were in for the long haul. You know, anybody can start up something, but keeping it alive is the hard thing. So we wanted to make sure we knew that economic development is measured in decades. And so we had to keep this thing alive for the long haul. And TRIDEC still exists today, and we're still working on a lot of these things. This became the largest economic development program in the Pacific Northwest at the time. And on top of all of that, we had another contractor change at Hanford, and they made some community investments too, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But another part I want to mention of the strategy here is to think big. And this is what takes enormous courage in a community. And so when we got the loaned executives that came in, and so now we had a staff of almost 15, 6 to 18 people or so working full-time in the TRIDEC building, we assign them what I call mega projects, but great, big, game-changing, potentially iconic projects. So what are some examples? The second half of the Columbia Basin project. That was huge. And that was already being worked on up by a group, Columbia Basin Development League up in Moses Lake. But take on finishing the second half of the Columbia Basin project, which would create even more irrigated agriculture for us. I told you that we thought retirement was a source of new money into town. Well, we didn't have any retirement communities, so a mega project was create them. And so one of the loan executives was assigned to doing master planning for retirement communities, which are now all over town. Food processing centers, including the wine industry. The wine industry, there was one winery here, Preston Cellars. The rest didn't exist or in a winemaker's garage. And so, but we knew the potential of wine industry and how it would change how people viewed the Tri-Cities from the anti-nuclear world to different. Create the Tri-Cities Science and Technology Park, which is now called the Tri-Cities Research District. Sports complexes, we needed to go build ball fields, et cetera. The Tri-City Coliseum, hockey in the desert, who knew? But we did it. The Rivershore Trail System, 22 miles plus now of trails around the Tri-Cities. Everyone said it's impossible, you'll never get people to work together to do it. Well, you all use it today. It's done and more likely to come. Creating a research university branch campus. This community decided we were going to have one, A. B, we decided it was going to be Washington State University. And 3, we led the charge in the state. The state didn't have branch campuses of research universities. There was no such thing. We led the charge and then was joined by many others around the state to create branch campuses, and we got WSU Tri-Cities. So, I mean, this was thinking big and let nothing get in your way. But when your back's against the wall, you don't have a lot of choice. You got to go do something and make it happen. Now, I mentioned at the bottom here, other Hanford contractor investments. These look different than that round I shared with you in part 1 of this discussion. But they created an angel capital fund, $2.5 million. And that's, small money that would go into startup enterprises, small being, if they needed $25,000, $50,000, $75,000, so $2.5 million would go a long way, but it was in small, what they call tranches, to help start up new businesses. Interesting, this is unbelievable. One proposal, remember this is back in 1986, 87, 88, somewhere back in there, was an artificial intelligence center. And they committed $400,000 to create one, and 3 months later backed away and just gave us the money. And they said, nah, we're not going to do that. Now think about what rolls off your tongue today. Artificial intelligence. And we had a chance back then to perhaps be at the forefront of some of that, and it didn't happen. But the other thing was to create an environmental laboratory here to do environmental sampling for all kinds of purposes, not nuclear, around the Pacific Northwest and beyond. So they were a little bit different kind of investments. Okay, so here we are. We created a whole bunch of businesses in this town. It's a long list where none existed before. Many have gone by the wayside, but startup companies, come and go. But so you got to create a lot of them, and then a bunch stick. And it's getting a little bit easier these days. I'm sure the more recent lecture that you're going to get on recent times will talk about software industry and things like that, where it's easier. We've the vision I showed you. We updated it. We even created an institution to do that. We created actually many organizations in this town, which is something I should comment on. But we created a community roundtable to make sure everybody had a seat at the table and continued to collaborate on the vision. And as a quick aside, when I said we were going to have retirement communities here, well, who's going to be responsible? Well, we created the Three Rivers Retirement, association to help steer that. When I mentioned sports, well, who's going to do it? Well, we created the Tri-City Sports Council. So we create, and that still exists today. So we're still, we create, where there was a gap and something missing, we created something for it and got the people excited and knowledgeable about it to be involved and gave them a seat at the table. The Three Rivers Community Foundation we created, that was to give money to nonprofits. River Shore Enhancement Council, we created that to do the 22 miles of trail. All those things were created where we had a gap and no one doing it. So, young professionals began to take root, and this is again the evolution as you get more young people in town. YPTC, Young Professionals Tri-Cities, got created where they could network and gather. There was yet another round of Hanford contractor investments. This time the seed capital that was put up was $10 million in something called Columbia Basin Ventures. And this is where we began privatizing Hanford. So we took the contaminated laundry facility at Hanford where they washed clothes that had nuclear contamination. That company now is in Horn Rapids, privately held, and it washes, does that kind of laundry for nuclear power plants, for hospitals, for Hanford and all of that. The fuel cladding and extrusion machine that was out of the area is now Kaiser Aluminum. That plant is still operating out near Horn Rapids. And it makes everything from masts for sailboats to baseball bats, that kind of stuff. The titanium fabrication plant we talked about earlier in the former session on Sandvik got into the wheelchair business, golf club manufacturing, golf club shafts, and it continued to diversify. The National Lab got its National Lab designation, became $1 billion enterprise, doing all kinds of work in all kinds of fields. The Framatome, it's now Framatome commercial fuel fabrication plant is expanding yet again and has grown and grown and grown dealing with the nuclear industry, which is now in its own renaissance, I think. And then there were other spin-off companies. So all of that began to happen, and the Hanford contractor investments, especially that seed capital fund, proved to be pretty handy. And then the mega projects that I was just telling you about, like Columbia Basin, the second half of the Columbia Basin Venture, Columbia Basin project, all of that continued to go on. Cleanup grew and became bigger than Hanford ever was now in terms of dollars. And to be very, very honest with you, it's been the secret behind all of this. Why? It gave us time. Everything I've been describing to you has taken decades, and we needed it. But the cleanup program and the scale of that cleanup program has kept the community afloat. And so in that sense, it's odd to say this, it's been a gift, but we've been fortunate to get all the support and all the financial wherewithal from our federal government to clean up Hanford, which needed to be done. So it's not a boondoggle kind of a thing, but it gave this town time. And now, as you'll hear later in another lecture, the proportion of Hanford impact on our economy is so greatly diminished. We'll be in good shape. We'll be just fine. This community's on its way. Infrastructure growth, I think you all are driving on it or using it or flying in and out of it. I mean, it's unbelievable what we've put in place here in terms of all of the backbone, the business climate issues that need to be addressed. So, LIGO, upper left, who knew that was coming? And a Nobel Prize winning scientific organization that helped put us on the map in a positive way. The top and middle is the vitrification plant, part of the multi-billion-dollar effort to clean up Hanford and glassify the waste. The B reactor, yes, we managed, to get the National Monument designation for Hanford and get B reactor saved and now make it a tourist attraction. The sports complexes, middle left, that we've purposefully built and continue to build and take advantage of. We talked about infrastructure, the bridge in the middle, the Lee Volpentest Bridge, named after the Tricknick leaders. When it was built, maybe some of you know or remember, it was the loneliest interstate highway in America. There was 6 lanes and nobody on it. Today, it's our traffic jam interstate. Moving over, let's see, what is that one over? Oh, that's the Lamb Weston complex in Richland. The world of potato processing is enormous here. They just added a new ultra-modern plant a few years ago. And in the center of that picture actually is their R&D center. So not only are they making frozen potato products, but their research and development center is now located here. Lower left, the warehousing and distribution things we talked about. There's preferred freezer services. At the time it was originally built, although it's been expanded, it was the largest such thing in North America. So our warehousing and distribution has grown, and now you know about the Amazon facilities here and all that. The retirement communities, I can't even name them all, but there's a whole bunch, and that industry has grown here just like we hoped. And then in the lower right was when we engaged the young people, the young professionals in the community. They did a series of charrettes, and they had quite a vision for the Tri-Cities, which they were able to capture in a graphic. And I don't know if we'll ever have high rises in a downtown like that, but I will say that Vista Field is going to be the new downtown of the Tri-Cities, and that took huge vision and an awful lot of work from people to put all of that in, and it's just now getting started, coming out of the ground. The wine industry, we've gone from people in their garages to the huge wineries that we all enjoy today. WSU Tri-Cities went from the Joint Center for Graduate Study, almost nothing, to the complex that it is today. In this vision, we even talk about having a wine center here. Well, guess what's at WSU Tri-Cities today? The Enology and Viticulture Center. It's amazing. To the right is the Tri-Cities Science and Technology Park, which we envisioned, the research district. Look what we've done in the visitor business, bringing in now cruise ships, if you will, Columbia River to the area. Columbia Point, for those of you who might remember, was what did we used to call it? The Rose Bowl, because it was where the waste treatment plant was for the city of Richland. And now it's been totally transformed into what it is today, and hosted the Ironman this past weekend. I could tell you the story of the Tri-City Coliseum and how that came to be, the miracle of hockey in the desert. It was a great story. It happened while I was at TriDec. But look what's grown up around it. And so the extra sheet of ice, the convention center, and all of that. The Reach started out inside the federal building, Project X, from the first lecture. It was next door to the post office. And then we actually moved the Fast Flex Test Facility Visitor Center into town, put it in there, and then built the Reach. The airport has gone through at least 3 or 4 huge transformations over the last 40, 50 years. And then I mentioned the new master plan and all the infrastructure is in for what I think is the new downtown Tri-Cities, but basically Vista Field being totally transformed. So that's the story, is that it takes decades and everyone in the community rising to the occasion and contributing and being applauded for what they do. So it is an exercise not just in economics, as we've thought about that strategically, but about psychology and getting people on board and getting them to contribute and to think they can do the impossible. I mean, that's where we were, was, we can't do this, and we have. And that's, a lot of people's work over many, many decades. The other day I like to hike, and I went up Badger Mountain, and I was standing up there looking at the view, and I just thought, wow, what a transformation. It's just truly amazing. So that's sort of what I'd like to leave you with is the psychology is that a community is going to rally around a cause. People just do. And if you can create that cause, and in our case it was the vision that we had for our future, you'll get the community to come with you and participate. You do best, though, when your back's against the wall. So it's the tough times, and America's kind of that way. We didn't do much in World War II until Pearl Harbor. And then our back was against the wall, and we united quickly and got busy. And it just kind of, don't let a good crisis go wasted, is an expression that's often maligned, but it's used a lot. But that, we had our crisis, and our back was against the wall, and we rose to it and created a cause. Give everyone who can help a seat at the table, unite them around the vision. Remember that the economy is a system, and plan accordingly. And what I mean by that is that jigsaw puzzle, all those pieces have to fit together and hold together. If you're going to create an agriculture or food processing economy, and your universities and your community college don't have any agriculture training or education programs, what good is that? your system's going to fall apart. And so these things all have to interplay and connect with one another. If you're going to have sports complexes and invite people to come and have their tournaments and their big events here, you better have hotels to put them in. So you have to think about your economy as a system and plan accordingly. Never say never, never say can't. I kind of beat that to death. But you just got to believe you can invent the way and figure it out. And I hope I've given you a number of examples, just like creating WSU Tri-Cities. We just invented the way. I mean, it didn't exist. Branch campuses didn't exist, And then the hardest part of all is perseverance, it's going to take decades. It just is. No one wants to hear that. But that's the way it is. So you got to plan for the long haul, make sure your institutions stick with it and stick to it. And we've been able to do that even though we've had to make changes over the years. Community Roundtable came, the Community Roundtable went, but then My Tri-Cities came along. So we've kept it all alive. Be accountable, celebrate success, fix your failures, fix those things that failed, and never be afraid to go big. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to share this with everybody. It's been a fun trip down memory lane for me, and I hope gave you some sense of how we got from there to here. Thanks. Thanks.
So I'm sorry that you're not able to see the audience here, but we wanted to offer the opportunity after your lectures to give folks some ability to have an interactive Q&A. I have a few questions that Mark, mostly scripted, I've edited a little bit, but we would love to hear questions from folks in the audience. But I'll give you a start off with one question that we've created. So you talked a lot about the vision process, or a little bit about the vision process and how we moved from individuals and how you sort of layered that. But I'm curious about if you could talk a little bit more about the vision process and how that came about, the sort of the vision for the visioning, if that makes sense, and then how it works to create and move us from where we were in the 1990s to where we are now.
Yeah. Good. Well, thanks for having me back to do this. I hope everyone's awake after those lectures. So, but you can't hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So, well, first, the whole visioning process is something I think it's uniquely human and it's natural. It's not some esoteric thing. We all do it every day. When we get up in the morning, you're visualizing the day ahead of you, where you're going to have lunch, where you're going to go to work, what meetings you might be having, dinner, whatever it might be, and then you go about making all that happen. So you have a picture in your mind of the day ahead of you. And so, the whole visioning process is something that humans just do. For those in the audience who are alone or you have a family, when you plan a vacation, it's the exact same thing. When you plan a vacation, you're visualizing someplace you want to go, how you're going to get there, what you're going to do when you get there. And what happens is this gives you drive and energy and gets you excited about the outcome that you want to desire, which is that vision. And all we're doing is scaling that up to a community level. And by that, the way to do that is to engage a good cross-section of the people in your community. And in our case, we picked 200 from all kinds of different walks of life, and to sit down and have them do a little dreaming. I mean, it's a heck of a lot of fun, actually. But to ask them, what do you see for the future of the Tri-Cities? What would you want? What would excite you? What might it look like? And do this in a number of different ways. So talk to me about K through 12 education and what you think that might look like. Talk to me about higher education and what that may look like. Talk to me about what do you see for transportation in our community? What do you see about parks and recreation? So you get a full picture, if you will, of the community of tomorrow that you want and that you desire and that would excite you to help make that happen. And so it's a fascinating process, because when we ask 200 different people from all walks of life in the community to do it, it's amazing the responses come out somewhat similar. But what we did is we took all of that and then you collapse it down And in our case, it came down to a 2-page sheet of paper. And I think the easiest way to think of it, it's a painting. I mean, those 2 pages, if you read them, would paint a picture of our community tomorrow. And hopefully you would write it in a way with enough proper adjectives and adverbs, et cetera, that you make it exciting and compelling. And you also write it in a first person present tense kind of way, where people say we are, not we're going to be, or it's someday in the future, but we are. And so we're talking about ourselves and what we want in the community that we want. So you have this picture. And just like I was telling you about getting up every day and visualizing your day and giving you drive and energy to get through your day or on a vacation, so this works with a community. I mean, by the time we were done crafting this thing, you know, those 200 people were excited. And they said, yeah, I can sign up to this. This is a community I want for tomorrow. I believe we can do this if we set about going to do it. And I'm excited, and I want to put drive and energy into making that happen. And so that's the psychological principle of doing it. Other communities have done this, so it wasn't unique to the Tri-Cities. In the case back then, I don't know that this will mean much to anybody, but Butte, Montana had just gone through a terrible closure of the mine, which was the only employer in town there. And they went through this process too, to try and figure out how would they reinvent Butte, Montana, you know? And so it's done at all different levels, all different scales, but that's the psychological principle. And so those 200 people were the ones that started us with the original vision.
I know that, so this is being shown with our friends in Iwaki City and Fukushima. And so they're learning the lessons from the Tri-Cities and thinking about diversification. And so I know that a lot of the things that you've been talking about today are going to be really helpful for their students and their faculty as they engage with this content. So thank you for that. I want to open it up for a few questions from anybody in the audience. Yeah.
First of all, I wanted to say thanks, Mike. That was a really incredible presentation, and I think this community owes you a great debt for the energy that you clearly put into this and the love that you've put into the community.
Were you able to hear that, Mike?
I got about 50% of it. I liked it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah.
All right.
It was a sincere thank you.
Then the other question I have is, or the question I have is, where do you see this community 2 decades from now? And who are the people that I need to be out there celebrating who are part of that visioning right now?
So the first part, I'm just going to repeat it because I know that I wanted to make it on our recording as well. But the first was a sincere thank you for all of the work that you've done to help direct the Tri-Cities in the last 40, 50 years, and so a sincere thank you. And the second was, where do you see the Tri-Cities in the next 20 years, and what partnerships and things should we be offering, like congratulations and support to do that, to get to where we need to be in the next 20 years? Is that?
Yeah, well, I'm always reluctant to give my own view on this because I do believe in the collective vision, but some things that I actually had written off as they weren't going to happen, I now believe they are. And this is why you refresh your vision every decade or so, is the world changes around you. Some things do become impossible. We never did restart the Fast Flex test facility. It was impossible, and it is physically impossible now. But along those lines, I mean, you all are reading the recent news and the possible resurgence, the likely resurgence, in my view, of the nuclear industry and the small modular reactor technology. I think it's going to happen, and I think our community is going to circle back to its nuclear roots and be at the forefront of not so much the design, et cetera, but putting them in place and operating them. And so we know now that Energy Northwest has the potential to do that, and I'm beginning to think it's real. There are big players now involved in this, other projects elsewhere. It's got enough potential legs to it, and I think that'll be revolutionary for our community. But also, you know, our energy system is mostly green now, but I see us continuing on with that. I think we're a community that's comfortable with all different forms of energy and green energy. Nuclear will now take its place in a much bigger way. But I think we're going to be moving into a world of the old term for it is industrial ecology. And you're reading in the paper how it's starting to emerge down in Wallula, where you're getting all these significant new kinds of green businesses. I mean, people are starting to invent whole new ways to transform, you know, agricultural products, agricultural waste, everything. And now you're reading about this stuff potentially becoming real on a huge scale down at Wallula, which is right next door, and of course will draw our people and our technology, and you know, and go. So I think the future for us is astounding in terms of a convergence of the technology that our community is comfortable with, and the way we choose to do business in our community, and these new businesses that are coming along. And what we're seeing is it's a fit, and so I see a bit of a industrial diversification on a whole new scale that I never would have imagined possible. But the evolution of the world is such, I think we're in a place to do that. Now, I think the second part was about partnerships and doing that. And I think we still have several institutions that are not even close to fading away or going away. And that, you know, one you probably just heard from is the Tri-City Industrial Development Council. We have the Regional Chamber of Commerce. We have a lot of very strong institutions in this community. The National Lab isn't going to go anywhere. Our cities have grown now. They are very strong, you know, parts of the whole. And our port districts have grown and are doing remarkable things. Part of my vision and what I applaud is you're going to see a whole new downtown. Something we don't even think about, a downtown Tri-Cities, but Vista Field will become that. I mean, I absolutely believe it. And the Port of Kennewick were the visionaries that drove that. And look what the Port of Benton is doing in the Port of Pasco, speaking of visionary projects. So the collective group of people involved in the economic future are stronger than they've ever been. And they do talk to one another, they cooperate, communicate, they collaborate, and yeah, they compete too. It's all a good thing. It's all good. So I think the partnerships might change form in some way or another, but they're going to be there, and they'll be there in the right way to realize the things I just shared with you.
Can you remind me, you talked a little bit about the percent of folks that were Hanford workers in the 1980s versus now.
Yeah.
Can you remind me what that shift has been?
Let's see. It was about 40% of the workforce, I think, was the number. Or maybe it was 25% of the workforce was Hanford back then. And we said for every Hanford job, there was at least one more in the community. So that was half of the total of the workforce, direct and indirect, were Hanford related. And that 25% of the Hanford folks made, you know, their wages were such that they represented 40% of the payroll. And then you add on the indirects on top of that, and you get up to probably around 60. But so it was huge. And now you could check with Carl Dyer, but I think that's down. We're down to 11 or something like that, or 9, or I can't, you know, around 10.
Yeah.
And so, and even though their wages are still healthy, the non-Hanford wage base has grown significantly compared to what we had, which was basically retail and some agriculture. I mean, we didn't have much else industrial at all. Now, look at the industry that's around us, and that pays much better. Did that answer, was that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was curious. Thank you. We have another question.
Yeah, so how did you attract industry or businesses here when the Tri-Cities had the reputation of being a nuclear waste site?
So the question was how to attract businesses here when we had the reputation of being a nuclear waste site.
Yeah, well, we couldn't. Back then, you know, Hanford was in the news and the front page every day, and it wasn't good. And it was that way, not just in the Tri-City Herald, it was in the Seattle Times. I mean, it was, I mean, we didn't know what we were going to do. But when the mission changed and its mission became environmental cleanup, not just abandoning it or whatever, but then there was going to be this long multi-billion-dollar, multi-year effort to make good, to clean all of that. Then you had a chance to begin changing your image, and it took a lot of time. But I'm just going to share something with you right now. This is me. But you know, people who we might have considered our enemy back then in terms of our reputation as a nuclear waste dump, they actually became great friends. And the reason is they demanded it get cleaned up. I mean, we did too in the community, right? But even the anti-nuclear, you know, the waste dump, where, you know, all of a sudden we wanted the same thing. It was a remarkable outcome. And though we saw each other maybe feeling differently about nuclear power, nuclear energy, the weapons mission, et cetera, when it came to the cleanup mission, we were in agreement. Now, we might have debated how to do it or what it was going to cost, but in an interesting way, those who were opposed we all joined in the same fight, which was, let's get this place cleaned up, and the sooner the better. And when that starts to happen, you come off of the headlines. They're fewer. You start to disappear, fade away. It's not an issue. Everyone knows it's out there. It's under control. Money's being spent to get it fixed, and then you don't have to worry so much about that old stigma being attached to your community, and it has faded away.
You talked in your lecture about the need to create new organizations that hadn't existed, and sometimes even to create them intentionally to fill gaps. Can you talk a little bit more about some of those organizations and this finding gaps and then creating organizations to help fill the mega plans?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the lecture, I told you that, you know, it was all about what could bring a new dollar into town. And in one of the areas we saw as a potential were youth sports. And because we were starting to have some tournaments here or cross-country races or whatever, we said, wow, you know, they like coming over here because the weather's better for some of these events and all of that. So, but we had nobody. There was no, you know, who's in charge of that? You know, if there wasn't anybody, I mean, the cities might have had a recreation director or something, but there wasn't. But what you discover if you just ask the question is, who out there might be passionate about creating a sports mecca in the Tri-Cities? Well, you know what? There were parents and businesses. There were a lot of people who cared about swim teams and hockey in the desert and a lot of this stuff. And when they're passionate about it, there's nothing you need to do except tell them go and say, we will help you organize, and what do you need to get going? And, you know, help them have a few meetings. They'll get organized, they'll pick their leadership, and they'll craft their agenda, and then you give them a seat at the table, and you become head cheerleader for their cause, which is part of our cause. And so I couldn't believe it, but there were people who wanted to help senior citizens, and we wanted retirees to come here. And so creating the Three Rivers, or I can't remember what it's called, the Retirement Bureau, was not hard to do. There were passionate people who wanted to go work on that project. And so what you do is we recognize where there's opportunities, where there is no one in charge, and you just ask the question. And believe me, you will get hands raised. I mean, it happens. And they love they loved the chance to do it. And they still exist today, in some way, shape, or form.
Any other questions from the audience? Mark, do we want to ask any of the other questions?
Well, I guess I was curious about how you sustain the effort to achieve the vision, because it's one thing to get everyone engaged and looking at that, but you've sustained it over multiple decades with largely volunteer organizations. And I guess in my experience, that's very, very difficult to do. So I'm wondering, what's the secret to doing that?
So the question was about the secret to sustaining over decades, right? So not just building the initial vision, but how do you sustain a movement towards that vision?
Hard work. No, you have to sustain it because it does take so long. So that's absolutely right. And what you do is just like with the Sports Council, the Retirement Bureau, or others, there are people passionate about this, and you create the steward of the vision that's right for the times. So we've gone through several. When we started, it was the Trideca of the past, but through the years, we've had different kinds of forms into what became the Three Rivers Community Roundtable, which was right for that era, that time, and then it decided to sunset and got replaced with My Tri 2030, and so these things morph or evolve. I have also tried, and I still am trying. Maybe there's somebody in the room that can help me. But I would like Leadership Tri-Cities actually to become a long-term steward of the vision. And why is that? Well, they've been around a long time. 600 people have gone through the program. I don't think that's going to go away. And it's the next generation of leadership in our community who will see the vision realized. And they're also the ones with new thinking to refresh the vision. And so maybe we're now of the era where Leadership Tri-Cities could take over as the steward and the orchestra conductor. But there has to be somebody. Make no mistake. And the Community Roundtable, I think I mentioned in the lecture, was the organization that didn't exist. There was no money, no staff. It was a set of community leaders who said, we're going to meet. And what you do to keep everyone engaged and at the table is you hold them accountable. And the way you hold people accountable is you make them face the public. And that's what we did and have always done, is we've said, this was the vision. The Sports Bureau said they were going to do this. And then you have the Sports Bureau stand up or the Sports Council, Tri-State Sports Council, and you have them give a report publicly. And so that's how we did it. And in the roundtable, we did it twice a year, and the press was there. It was an open luncheon, and we reported progress against the vision. Here's what's working. Here's what's not. Here's how long it's going to take. Here's where we need help, etc. And you just hold yourselves publicly accountable to the progress. And when you do that, people get real interested because they're not the ones that want to stand up at the podium and say, I didn't do anything the last 6 months, And so to me, the trick in all of that is broad public accountability, and let people ask questions and attack you if they want to, but really cheer you on to encourage you to continue, even if you stumble along the way.
Yeah, thank you. Any other last minute? All right, Mike, we want to thank you so much for your time, both in putting together the presentation and then joining us remotely for this Q&A. We've really appreciated your expertise and contributions to this series.
Great, I enjoyed it. My pleasure. Thanks. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.